met Alexander Blom, tv-maker bij Family 7, reis ik door Israël. Met ons reizen mee Richard Donk, journalist van het Reformatorisch Dagblad, en Henk Visser, fotograaf. Israël is bijna dagelijks in het nieuws. Zogeheten nieuwsfeiten waar iedereen wel een mening over heeft. Ga met ons mee op zoek naar het menselijke verhaal achter de krantenkoppen. In het nieuws horen we vaak hoe Israël de mensenrechten aan de laars lapt. De realiteit ligt echter een stuk gecompliceerder. In deze aflevering spreek ik met twee mannen die aan de wereld willen laten zien wat er volgens hen echt aan de hand is. Straks bezoek ik de Messias-belijdende Jood Caleb Nijers. Hij is internationaal strafjurist en vecht mensenrechten schendingen aan bij het internationale strafhof. Schendingen die de Palestijnse overheid haar eigen burgers aandoet. Maar eerst zijn we onderweg naar de Palestinian Media Watch, een organisatie in Jeruzalem die de Palestijnse media in de gaten houdt.
Ja, dat is ook een moeilijk verhaal.
Aan de buitenkant van het kantoor kun je niet zien dat ze hier gevestigd zijn.
Nice to meet you. I'm Sarah. Yeah.
Aan het hoofd van de Palestinian Media Watch staat Itamar Marcus.
Can you tell me what is happening here in this room?
Okay, so what we do here at Palestinian Media Watch is first thing we do is we follow everything that's happening in the official Palestinian media, and that includes all the social media, it's everything today. So we watch Palestinian Authority television, we watch Hamas television, we watch the Fatah Facebook page, the websites. We want to know all the messaging that the Palestinian leadership is giving to their people in Arabic. Not what they're telling you in Europe. We want to know what they're telling their people in Arabic, and that's why we follow all of this.
What is the difference?
Very often they can be completely different. So for example, Palestinian Authority tells Europeans that all they want is Judea Samaria, which they call the West Bank, and then there'll be peace. They tell their own people, and they tell their children that the goal is Jaffa and Haifa and Akko. They say all of Israel is an occupation, and all of that has to become part of Palestine. Two completely different messages on the most fundamental issues. Another example is violence and terror. They tell the international community that they're against violence and terror, yet their own people are honored and glorified every time they kill an Israeli. The Palestinian Authority rewards the terrorists who are imprisoned by Israel with high salaries, and if they're in prison long enough, their salary is going to reach 12,000 shekel a month, which is about 3,000 euro a month.
But how are they getting away with this? Because this is a crazy story, so to say.
Well, over the last few years, we've been Palestinian Media Watch. I've been traveling to European parliaments and documenting this. And in fact, Dutch Parliament was one of the most vocally angry at this process. In fact, a few years ago, Dutch Parliament voted 148 to 2 to cut off all funding to the Palestinian Authority if they continue paying salaries. It was in response to this that the Palestinian Authority tried to deceive the international community and say they weren't paying salaries anymore. We proved last year that they were, and now again there's tremendous international pressure on the Palestinian Authority to stop. But it's not just the salaries. They honor the terrorists. They have television programs every week honoring murderers of Israelis.
We kijken mee op de computer van Itamar om te zien hoe dat gebeurt.
One of the ways that the Palestinian Authority tells its people that it supports terror is by naming sporting events after terrorists. And what you have here is a picture of one of the worst examples we've ever seen. This is a football tournament that was named the Ahmed Manasra football tournament. Ahmed Manasra was the youngest terrorist ever. 13-year-old boy who a little over a year ago stabbed an Israeli 13-year-old boy in the neck and almost killed him. And if you look at the children who are participating in the Ahmed Ben Nasser football tournament, they're around the same age, also around 13. So the message from Palestinian Authority to 13-year-olds is, if you want to be a 13-year-old hero, find an Israeli 13-year-old and stab him in the neck. That's the message. The 13-year-old Israeli was in a coma for 2 weeks and he almost died. In the end, he survived. But this is how they promote terror, and then they come to the world and say, oh no, we're fighting terror and we're not in favor of terror. Also, last year, there was an active terror wave going on, and many teenagers were involved in terror. The Palestinian Authority named a basketball tournament for girls after Dalal Mughrabi, a female terrorist who hijacked a bus in which 37 Israeli civilians were killed. So here you have all the girls in a Dalal Mughrabi. So while terror is going on, and teenagers are involved in terror, for teenage girls they have a tournament honoring a terrorist who killed civilians. And of course we continue to have teenage terrorists since then, because that's the message from the Palestinian Authority to its teenagers, even girls.
Do you think that teenagers realize this, that they know that, okay, this is some person that killed?
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Yeah, they talk about it.
So these happy girls you just see walking on the street and they like murderers?
They're taught to admire murderers. There are 3 schools named after the same Dalal Mughrabi. These are 12 of the children who were killed by Dalal Mughrabi on the bus hijacking. This is the picture of the bus.
Yeah.
And there are 3 schools named after 27 people in all who were killed on this. Palestinian Authority Television went to one of the Dalal Mughrabi schools and interviewed the girls on what it's like to be in a school named after Dalal Mughrabi, and listen to what they say.
احنا متواجدين حاليا بمدرسة دلال المغربي لحتى نتعرف وإياكم على أصل حكاية هالشهيدة وهالمناضلة الفلسطينية. دلال المغربي قائدة عظيمة، هذه المناضلة ربما ماتت وصعدت روحها إلى السماء، ولكن ما زالت أمهاتنا تنجب ألف دلال وما زالت روحها سارية فينا. دلال المغربي أعطتنا الكثير، وأنا شخصيا أفتخر بأنني أنتمي إلى مدرسة دلال المغربي، وأمنية حياتي أن أصل للدرجة التي توصلت إليها الشهيدة المناضلة دلال المغربي.
Life's ambition is to be like Dalal. So that's what they're learning. And we've already documented 24 schools named after terrorists. So the tens of thousands of children, just by going through schools named after terrorists, are getting a message. We're supposed to be like them. We're supposed to kill.
Morning.
Het probleem wat Itamar Marcus ontmaskert, probeert Caleb Meijers ook internationaal onder de aandacht te brengen. Dat doet hij onder andere in de Knesset, in het Israëlisch Hoge Rechtshof, het Internationaal Strafhof in Den Haag en het Europese Parlement.
So Caleb, can you tell me about human rights? What do you do here in Israel?
I founded an organization about 14 years ago called the Jerusalem Institute of Justice, and we do special projects to advance civil rights, human rights, freedom of religion in Israel and the Palestinian territories. So, whereas there are many Palestinian organizations that condemn Israel for the way it treats Palestinians, and many Israeli organizations that condemn the Palestinian Authority for what it does to Israel, we take a little bit of a different perspective. We challenge the Israeli government on issues of human rights regarding Israelis, and we challenge the Palestinian Authority on issues of human rights and the way that they treat the Palestinians.
Right. So what kind of things do you mean?
Well, we have an internship program, for instance, where between 30 to 50 students from around the world come every year, and they go into the Palestinian territories and write reports. They interview people. So we write reports on women's rights, children's rights, arbitrary arrests, torture and degrading treatment, unjust trial, which is, there are many executions without trial. There are a lot of problems with human rights, but the primary abuser is the Palestinian Authority itself, and particularly Hamas in Gaza.
But are they also going into Gaza, for example?
We can't, no. The answer is no. It's very difficult to access Gaza, and it's not very safe.
Yeah.
But what we have 2 internet sites, one for men and one for women in Arabic, which explain the human rights to people in Gaza and invite them to tell their stories to us, to send us their stories through the internet in an anonymous way. And we guarantee anonymity. And then we contact them and we do many Skype interviews with people.
Right.
So our reports are not just based on, we don't just quote the report of another organization that's quoting another organization that's quoting. We have a lot of very strong sourced material. And then what we do is we take these reports. In the Palestinian Authority, there really is no proper rule of law or separation of powers. There are courts and judges in the Palestinian Authority, but in the West Bank, they're appointed by Fatah, which is a militant organization, and in Gaza, they're appointed by Hamas. So they'll never actually make a decision against the Palestinian leadership for abuse of human rights of Palestinians. So there is no real rule of law, which means the only way that we can actually advance Palestinian human rights is by advocating with the international community.
They also encourage children to seek martyrdom death. They tell them that it's good to die for Allah. It's good. And I want to show you an example. This was on just already in 2017, at the beginning of the year. This is on a children's program on official Palestinian TV.
بعد الظلام العود يسقط ورق التوت بكرة نجيب الثار قائد التابوت احنا الفتح اعصار نستورد الناقود ابو محمد شكرا.
Okay, look at these words. Our blood is food for the revolution. This is a young boy being told that his blood, also earlier, for you, Yasser Arafat, we will die. Why are children of this age being taught on official PA television on a children's program that death is something that's expected? I'll just tell you something very interesting. There are, in the United States, there are 3 different Muslims who I've been working with, who've spoken at conferences where I've spoken. One is from Jordan originally, one is from Egypt, and a woman is from Pakistan. All of them are horrified by this material, but what do they all say? They all say, that was me. When I was a child.
Really? They say that?
Yes. When I was a child in Pakistan, when I was a boy in Jordan, when I was a boy in Egypt, that was me. And they said, and I now want to fight against this and against what the Palestinians are doing because it's child abuse. They consider that they were abused as children. They say, I was abused and I want to fight and give these children a future without hatred. During the terror last year, many of the terrorists, the majority of the terrorists were actually killed in the act because most of them were using knives. And even those using guns, many were killed. The Palestinian Authority, Fatah, wanted to encourage them not to fear death. So they produced this video, which they put on their official Facebook page, targeting young people to tell them, don't worry about death attacking an Israeli because this is actually even better than life. This is what Allah wants of you. He wants you to die for Him, attacking an Israeli. And this is a promotional video, for that reason, where all the actors, all the heroes end up dying.
Dit hoor. Ja. Gekte.
Kill and be killed. That's the message of the Palestinian today. People kill, if you succeed in killing, that's wonderful. And if you're killed, it's just as wonderful because the martyr is Allah's beloved. So if you die for Him by killing an Israeli, you're his beloved. That's the message of the Palestinian Authority and Fatah, the so-called moderates, to their people.
Do you look at Palestinians as the children as potential terrorists?
Yeah.
I look at Palestinian children as victims. When they're 5, 6, 7, and 10 and they're learning this, they're victims. They've been poisoned. Had a press conference a few years ago with Hillary Clinton when she was a senator. And at the press conference with me, she said, the Palestinians are profoundly poisoning the minds of their children.
Yeah.
Well, if they're poisoned, they're victims. Now, the tragedy is that those poisoned children are going to grow up into being terrorists, and they'll end up being killed, our children will end up being killed, other civilians. So that's the great tragedy here. I have no anger at the Palestinian children, but I have endless anger at the Palestinian leadership, at Mahmoud Abbas, and the entire infrastructure of hatred and the leadership of hate that he's created.
Desondanks wordt in de internationale media de Palestijnse leider Mahmoud Abbas juist vaak als gematigd geportretteerd. Hoe komt het dan dat de media Israël regelmatig neerzet als agressor en schender van mensenrechten?
I think that an element of it is anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism exists. Anti-Semitism is very real, and it's the only explanation I have for ridiculous situations where the Israeli army, for instance, I believe, goes beyond any other army ever in the history of mankind of trying to protect human life of the enemy within a military engagement. So the last time we went into Gaza, the IDF actually made over 150,000 phone calls to Palestinians saying, please leave your area because there's Hamas active there and we're going to have to bomb this area. They dropped millions of pamphlets from the air warning people in certain areas, etc. On the other hand, Hamas is creating war crimes because it enforces curfews, which means when these people are warned, it keeps the people in their buildings at gunpoint, Palestinians, purposely putting them in the line of fire, hoping that if Israel does fire, Palestinians will be killed, pictures can be taken of the carnage, that'll make Israel look like somebody who's abusing and breaching international law when it's not really accurate. And these are all facts on the ground. Israel allowed thousands of journalists to enter Gaza that witnessed this in first person during the last military engagement. And it's very frustrating that it's not covered more broadly in the international media, which means there's bias.
Isn't it too easy to say, oh well, this is anti-Semitism again?
I think it's difficult to say that it's anti-Semitism because it sounds like such a simple answer. But sometimes the truth is simple, and I think that we need to call the child by its name. When you apply a different standard to two very similar situations, so you look at the Palestinian Authority and say, oh, we don't really expect you to uphold human rights, and then you apply a standard to Israel which is far above the human rights standard of any country in the world, that's very obvious bias. It can come from two things. It can come from either anti-Semitism, which is bias against Jews for being Jews, or it can also come from racism against Arabs. Because if I say, because you're an Arab, I don't actually expect you to honor women, I don't expect you to have fair trials, I don't expect you to treat each other with decency, that's making a statement regarding Arabs.
So basically I think the focus point should be on the violation of the human rights in Gaza, right?
Yeah, Gaza has the most severe violation of human rights. At the end of January, I traveled to The Hague and I submitted a lawsuit, actually communication to the prosecutor's office at the International Criminal Court in The Hague, demanding that they investigate Ismail Haniyeh, head of Hamas in Gaza, for war crimes against Palestinians. His militants used people as human shields. When they would cross the street, they'd surround themselves with 12 children, so that if God forbid, Israel fired on them, children would be injured. That's a war crime. They stored weapons, major weapons, missiles, in civilian infrastructure, including hospitals, clinics, kindergartens, putting civilians in the line of fire. Their own people cannot speak out. And this is, in all the situations that come before the court, it's the same thing. You have to have independent NGOs that actually submit communications, bring forth evidence, and then cause the court to act. it's never the people themselves. People from Gaza cannot ask the International Criminal Court to prosecute Ismail Haniyeh because they would be executed. And I'm simply representing the voices within the Palestinian Authority that cannot speak up for themselves.
But they speak to you.
Yes.
In this room, everything happens. We start from the raw material and we take it all the way to the subtitled videos and actually produce the reports. So if we look over there in the corner at Meira was born in Egypt. Her name was Maisa there. Now she has a Hebrew name. And she's watching Palestinian television.
Okay.
And translating for us at first into Hebrew.
Yeah.
Looking for the important material that might be there.
Yeah.
Simultaneous to what Meira is doing in English. On television, we have on the desk right next to you is another translator, and he's reviewing official Palestinian Authority newspaper, going through literally every article. You never know where every article, because for example, even in sports pages, as you've seen, there's sporting events named at the terrace, so that we even have to read the sports pages of the newspaper, because you never know where you're going to find important material. You can read a whole sports article, and then at the end it said, this tournament was named after, and it's a terrorist who killed 20 people.
Een van de medewerkers laat ons een deel van een uitzending zien die ze op dat moment aan het vertalen is.
Was trained for 6 months in a military training camp, and he turned her into a perfect example. And she was able to be even the leader of 10 or 11 men. They went across the sea in rubber boats from Lebanon. And then she went in the hijacked bus. She went 82 kilometers from Haifa to Tel Aviv. And she was able to kill 37. He said, and she was able to kill 37 Israeli soldiers, but of course we know that they weren't soldiers.
What kind of television program was this? Was it like a documentary or?
This was a talk show that was on TV in honor of the anniversary of Abu Jihad, the anniversary of his being killed by Israel.
It's been recently.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Just this month. We're in the process right now of subtitling. Both are dealing with hate messages to children on official Palestinian television. And here's the first one. By the way, the program that we're watching is called The Best Home. It's the most important children's program on Palestinian TV.
Okay.
What you saw here are a number of the hate messages all combined into one. One is a libel that Israel poisoned Yasser Arafat. Of course, it's been proven to be false, but it generates hatred. The goal is the liberation of all of Palestine, means all of Israel. And we're willing to be martyrs, millions of martyrs marching to Jerusalem. So here in one little brief video, we see how the children are constantly getting all... It's worthy to hate Israel. They murder Arafat. We're going to liberate all of Israel. And
you have a reason to hate.
You have a reason to hate, and you should even die for it.
Yeah. So, just a question, have you ever been threatened because of the work that you do here? Or has there been a threat here?
We haven't been directly threatened, but the Palestinian Authority attacks, verbally attacks Palestinian Media Watch regularly. Last year, they actually broadcast a 10-minute interview. They rebroadcast a 10-minute interview that I had done on Israeli television. They translated it to Arabic, and they twisted some of the words to make it sound that we were saying that we wanted to harm Palestinian children. And this was happening while terror was going on all around us. 3 Israelis who had recently been killed just a block away. So we took the name off the door. We put in cameras. We're going to be extra cautious, even though we haven't had any specific threats.
Right. And some of the people here, you ask me not to film them. Can you explain me why that is?
Many of our translators originally are from military intelligence, and many of them still do reserve duty in military intelligence, and for that reason they prefer not to be filmed.
Right. To be honest, if I think about your job, it's not really the most cheering job that you can have. How do you get happy from your work?
I get happy because it's impacting. I get happy because I see change. As bad as things are today, it would be so much worse without the things that Palestinian Media Watch has exposed. Without Palestinian Media Watch, the world wouldn't even know that the Palestinians are paying salaries to these terrorists. They wouldn't know about all the sporting events named after the terrorists. The world would be believing that Israel is the problem. And what we're doing is we're going country by country and convincing the people and convincing the legislators and the governments when we can that the problem is the Palestinian Authority. Ideally, it would be changed by the people themselves who would get sick of their leadership for just poisoning them with hatred. And they are sick of the leadership, by the way. Recent polls for the last many months have shown that 80% of Palestinians think that the government is corrupt and 65% want Mahmoud Abbas to resign. And if you're thinking of putting pressure any direction, pressure has to be put on the Palestinian Authority because it's only by putting pressure on them that they possibly will ever change and change from a hate-filled, terror-promoting authority to possibly something peaceful.
Like on a personal level, it's not nice, I think, to be the guy who's always on the other side of what the rest of the world thinks. How is this for you?
Yeah, I feel like when I look at the story of David and Goliath, I think that actually if I was betting back then, I would have bet on David and not Goliath.
Why is that?
Because David had the blessing of God and he was representing Israel. And when I look around today to the Israeli nation, I see blessing. I think Israel is miraculously blessed, and I believe that's in my heart of hearts. I believe it's God's hand that's blessing Israel, that has gathered back the Jewish people from around the world, that's given us the strongest economy in the world. Like literally today, there are more companies traded on NASDAQ than the entire European continent, and our environment's being blessed. It's really miraculous. How is it that Israel has the highest agricultural output per capita than any country in the world? We have the highest dairy output per capita than any country in the world.
Tell me.
I believe it's because of the blessing of God. So I think I'm on the winning side. So
Yeah.
I don't feel like it might be David and Goliath, but who won in the end, right?
That's
David.
right.
So I'm glad I'm like David told Goliath, if God is with us, who can be against us? And that, I think, gives me the faith to continue speaking up for truth and taking on these seemingly insurmountable projects.
Wat deze twee mannen met hun werk onthullen, is dat de mensen in Gaza net zo goed slachtoffer zijn. De schuldigen zijn niet de Palestijnse burgers, maar het zijn hun leiders die kinderen aanzetten om Joden te haten en die de mensenrechten van hun bevolking schenden. Een onthutsende ontdekking waar over het algemeen weinig aandacht voor is.
Wij overtreden zijn regels.